Yo, what's good everyone? Happy 2021. Like most of us, I felt that 2020 was a pretty terrible year, and I just wanted to get it over with and move on to better things. But now here we are, well into January, and everything is pretty much still the same. Choosing to ignore all the bad isn't productive, and in order to grow and be a better creative in 2021, it is necessary to reflect on 2020. So towards the end of December, I went out on the last photo walk of the year. I really wanted to end 2020 doing something creative and hoping to get some good shots. There are a bunch of pretty compelling images, especially towards the end of this photo walk. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I am taking it as a good sign moving into 2021. So in this photo walk video, besides the usual composition tips and shooting techniques, I will reflect on 2020 and share some of the important lessons that I learned, along with some of my goals for 2021 to be a better creative. This photo walk started off on a dreary winter day. I went to this waterfront park to see if there was anything interesting to shoot, but there was this low fog that covered most of the buildings. It was kind of hazy and overall pretty uninspiring. And honestly, that's how I felt about most of 2020. I didn't want the last photo walk of the year to be this terrible, so I left the area and tried to find some urban scenes instead. As I was walking, I came across this cool building with a ton of LED lights in this tunnel. Using the wide end of the Tamron 17-28, I was able to exaggerate the one-point perspective in this composition. It was a cool shot, but I waited around to see if anyone would walk past. A short while later, this woman entered the frame from the left, and I used a continuous burst mode to capture her right in the middle of this opening. I would definitely want to come back here at night because I think the lights can create some really interesting effects. On the other side of this tunnel, I found myself in this atrium between two buildings. I took this shot with the camera tilted up to get this effect like the buildings were towering over the viewer. I thought it was a cool architectural shot, but only when I was editing it did I realize that there were two small people in the distance. After leaving the building complex, I stopped at the corner of the street because this dead end sign caught my eye. While technically the scene was nothing special, there was still something there that I just had to try and shoot. So while waiting around, I took a shot of these two people walking by the sign. This frame evoked certain feelings of dread, but also curiosity and ambition. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but the way that these two were walking past the dead end could be part of a story. So while editing, I used this film effect and I think it worked quite well to pull everything together. Continuing down the block, I saw this bar at the next corner. The neon sign caught my eye because it was glowing red, even though it was really bright out. The fog had diffused the light and it created a unique look. There's not too much more to this image, but it's just one of those cool shots that I like to look at. At this point, I looped back around and made my way to the waterfront where I started. The light was fading and I was hoping the fog would have lifted by now. Upon entering the scene, I saw this lone guy sitting on the bench, framed perfectly by the trees around him. I chose this composition where the branches were encroaching into the frame to give it an ominous feel. I think this shot tells a story that we are all too familiar with. I really wanted to end this year on a positive note, but most of the images I've taken so far have been a reflection of the negative parts of 2020. Luckily, I saw these two people sitting on another bench and ended up capturing this shot. Now, this image tells a more positive story, but the overall lighting and conditions are still pretty dreary due to the fog. As I make my way up this path, I saw these people standing in the distance. The fog in this image actually adds a lot of atmosphere and mood to the shot. The compression from the 85mm also creates some depth to an otherwise flat image. After this, I hop over the rocks and make my way down to the water. I set up my tripod for some long exposure shots. Again, I was still kind of bummed out that the weather was so terrible, but it is what it is and I tried to make the best of the situation. That's an important lesson that I learned this past year. Many things are out of our control, but finding those few things that you can control will make a difference. So in this shot, I used the rocks as the leading lines and I like the smoothness of the water in this long exposure. While I was waiting for the long exposure, I noticed this light coming in from my left. Out of nowhere, the sun just comes out. I quickly take my camera off the tripod and take a few handheld shots. This sunset was incredible. Just look at this image. The sun looks like it's a moon here, partially covered by the clouds. There are some bits of blue sky, contrasting with the warm orange glow. The horizontal framing gets more of the bridge in the scene, and it looks like a frame out of a film. At this point, I am just in shock. This was shot on the A7R IV, and I cropped in really tight on the sun. You can even see the birds flying around. I could not believe how beautiful this scene was, especially after such a dull and boring day. I wanted to try long exposure again because the other shot was so underwhelming. I put my camera back on the tripod and framed this image with the beach in the foreground. Because I was shooting at 17mm, the rocks on the left hand side were too big and the frame felt unbalanced. I tried again at 28mm and cropped in for a better composition. I stopped down to capture this beautiful sunstar as the sun set behind the buildings. While there was still some light left, I repositioned the tripod and took a shot of the Freedom Tower. I didn't even know it was there because it was completely covered by fog. This is another cinematic image with the warm orange glow coming in from the left and then the cooler tones on the right. I was so happy the fog had lifted and it felt like a good sign going into the new year. To end this photo walk, I took an image of the Empire State Building. The tip was barely revealed through the fog and the colors are softer now as the sun set. This image has such a peaceful mood which I really like. Lastly, I did one more long exposure of this scene. I love the unique look because the long exposure is able to capture the movement of the clouds across the skyline. I thought this whole day was going to be a waste, but this sunset saved it and made an amazing photo walk to end 2020. This photo walk made me realize that so many things are just down to luck, but depending on your perspective and what you make of the situation, even terrible conditions can yield great results. So in the new year, I'm going to try to not let the negative situations affect my creativity and not let the negativity control my life. Another big takeaway is to try everything and just go do it. I waste so much time just thinking about the things I want to do, and even worse, thinking that they're not worth trying to do. So if you have a concept or an idea, just go for it, no matter how dumb it may sound in your head. Nobody becomes a better creative by doing the same things that everyone else already has done. Lastly, cherish those small moments. Being trapped inside for most of the year has made me realize that those small moments are also very meaningful. Not everything needs to be a huge event in order for it to be special. Applying that concept into your own creative work can be very rewarding as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and like if you want to support my channel. Every bit of engagement helps a lot. Let's all try to be better creatives and make 2021 an amazing year. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Peace.